Welcome to Cohesive Friendship Unit. My name is Chris. I am here with Brian,
What's going on?
Jake,
Hey guys.
and Jeremy.
What is up?
How's late stage capitalism treating you, Jeremy?
Um, Great.
Let me pitch you an idea, Jake. What if we could let Van Gogh, right, patent a stroke technique? How would that work? Would that be good?
Sounds fair.
All right,
It's
Brian.
intriguing.
Capitalism.
What if we let Shakespeare patent sentence structure? Like, he can only do compound sentences. He's the only one.
I mean, it'd make everything more concise except for his shit.
Well, right now we got the video game equivalent of that going on. I guess for me, that this is like a bit. I'm probably gonna pop off at one point tonight. Warner Brothers, of all fucking companies, is the first video game publisher to secure a patent for a video game mechanic. So not like an intellectual property, not a character, but an actual game mechanic. And I'm just going to quickly go over what that encompasses. This is for their 2 Lord of the Rings games that they published a few years back. Pretty decent games. Now I hate them. Basically, they have the, quote, Nemesis System, which encompasses Nemesis characters, forts, social vendettas, in all computer games. And what that system was, is it was an okay system. Should it be patentable? Absolutely not. If your character was killed by a certain orc in the game, that orc would remember you, and they would move up in the ranks, and they would remember how they killed you, and they would remember your weakness, and you would come have a rivalry with orcs that killed you, and those orcs would get promoted. That's the basis of the system. So it encompasses the hierarchy of procedurally generated NPCs that interact and remember the player's actions. It covers the changes to NPCs in the hierarchy during their interaction with the player, and it encompasses their change in behavior and appearance based on their interactions with the player. And finally, it also covers, I guess in the sequel, the orcs were able to hold strongholds that you would besiege if they became powerful enough. That is also encompassed in this patent. So pretty extensive patent. Right off the bat, I guess we can let's just talk about this, because it can go everywhere. This is a dumb fucking idea. Whoever let this happen, which by the way, they've been trying for 5 years to make this happen. They finally got it valid up through 2035.
I think the rather insidious part of this is that they didn't patent the software. They really patented the idea of the Nemesis system, because anyone that's remotely familiar with how patents work, they'll know that you really can't patent software. They don't exist because it's nearly impossible to protect software. That's why there's a million ride-sharing companies, is because you can't patent that. Going back to your example of Van Gogh or Shakespeare, you can't necessarily patent a brushstroke, because all it takes is one microscopic change and it's not the same brushstroke anymore. But the idea of using a brushstroke you can patent, apparently. So they're not really protecting the code they wrote. They're protecting an idea that I don't know if it's even necessarily theirs. I don't think procedurally generated things in general are new. The Nemesis system is definitely very cool and was not done before they came out with Shadows of Mordor, but it's not I don't know. It's not a new idea at this point.
Sure.
When I first read this, I was like, okay, so that's there's a couple of different types of patents, and a lot of times nowadays, especially when you see patented or patent pending, what they're talking about is a design patent, not a patent on the mechanism or some fundamental part of the thing. And this almost sounds like that, where you're patenting the shape of it, because you can't, like Jake said, you can't patent an idea. You can't prevent someone from having an idea or charging. You can't charge people to have a concept. Once it's out there, it's out there. And if you're not gonna you can duplicate kind of the spirit of what their AI does, which kind of sounds just like an AI that works properly. But you can get around that by being clever about how you implement your design. I mean, it's a money grubbing move. I actually think of what I do as a job, which is working on turn of the last century streetcars. And one of the things that you saw a lot of in that industry was everything was patented. Like people had patents on the design of the steps and the little fittings inside the cars, and literally every detail of the thing someone or multiple people had taken out patents on just to get royalties on that particular design. And it's a cash grab. It's pretty on the face of it, but I don't think that they'll really see much in like how relevant is this going to be in 3 years. You know, these are pretty basic, that like the AI has a hierarchy and they like know which one killed the player and it moves it. That's pretty simple. It's not groundbreaking stuff. I would imagine that this would be common in video games even 2 or 3 years from now.
Well, that's just the problem, though. It's so broad sweeping that's like the slippery slope, right? So
it's so broad that it's almost indefensible. Like you can't say that they own every AI that does anything like this.
Right, but every indie studio that's trying to do anything now has to have a team of lawyers to defend themselves. Like they're just gonna get this. This is so bad.
Or you just get creative and you work around it, because that's how patents work. Someone comes up with a patent.
Yeah, I think Brian's kind of right that they're gonna have an impossible time defending this, because I'm playing a ton of Hades right now, and one of the mechanics is that is when you die or when you have a conversation with someone in one run, they may mention it in the next run or a couple of runs from now. So it's taking parts from the quote Nemesis system, where you meet someone out on one of your roguelike runs, you have a conversation, and then they remember it in a future interaction. It's not a new idea. The Nemesis system definitely was at its time, but like, is that Nemesis characters? Is that Nemesis AI? Like, it already exists? Is it already breaking the patent?
I mean, it is breaking the patent if it encompasses the NPCs, which change based on the player's actions. That's like covered in the patent.
Yeah,
but that's a really broad interpretation.
Right, but they could still take Supergiant Games to court and say that they violated the patent. And Supergiant Games is a way smaller studio.
Lawsuit. Like, I don't think a judge would uphold that. I think that a judge would be like, "This is ridiculous. You can't put a patent on
but
every."
They already got the
game.
patent.
And the problem is they could take them to court.
Yeah.
Like now, Supergiant Games or any indie studio has to pay for that.
Or you find a way around it.
But
like, they can,
if they bring it against you, you have to pay for it. Like, see ex-President Trump, his entire strategy in life.
What do you think about this, Jay?
It is a sign of our collective impending doom. This is like the latest, as you guys were all talking about, the latest, expansion of product patents, where people are just like, this is to me equivalent, like if they tried to patent kart racing games after Mario Kart.
Yep.
And they said all new kart racing, we invented that. No one was doing that before us. So no one else can do games where you get in a cart and you go in around a track and there are fun little shit that you run over.
Or you can pay us money to do it.
Which is what's going, like, to skip ahead, basically. But that's what I see happening with this, is Warner Brothers is going to be able to extort particularly smaller studios. Like, essentially, you pay us a fee or we will bury you in court fees. We're not going to win the case, but we have, standing to take you in. And sometimes we might win the case because Time Warner is a gargantuan financial donor in our political system. That's how they get shit like this passed in the first place. It's like how Mickey Mouse is going to get renewed for its 100th year of patent protection, even though the fucking law, when it was signed, gave you 15 years of patent protection for intellectual property like that. Like these are all new, basically legal ideas, relatively new, and they're going everywhere, folks.
I just like the other thing that I hate about this is it strong arms other studios that wouldn't necessarily be interested in doing this to play ball. I'm thinking like, and I'm not saying that Nintendo wouldn't want to play ball. I'm sure they would love to play ball with this kind of shit now that they know it's possible. But let's just take them as example. Nintendo sees this and they're like, well, shit, like now I guess we got to patent jumping. Like we got to give it a shot because like if we don't do it, then Warner Brothers is going to do it. And we're not going to pay Warner Brothers every time Mario takes a fucking jump.
Yeah, I mean, that's problematic, but I still think that the argument would be really shaky. Like the best argument that you can, regardless of who the company behind it is, the argument on this wouldn't. I don't think it would pass muster under most circumstances.
But you could still take them to court and charge them the legal fees.
Right, but you could also like, if you're an indie game developer, you clearly are creative. So
right.
This is another challenge. Like you need to do the same thing, but in a way that's not this patented method. Like you can't put a patent on everything, and there has to be, there is a way around it. It may not be whatever, or it may work. It's like you're grasping at straws with this. Like you can patent it, fine, but if it's something that nobody really, if you're patenting like an outdated mechanic or something that's like current at best, is everybody going to be flocking to your doorstep for licensing fees?
Right,
like,
but aren't you worried that every company is going to start patenting everything now? Because that's what I'm worried about. Like the rat race has begun.
I think that the optics of that are really troubling. And I think that a lot of people have a very similar reaction to this that we do. And incidentally, if you're one of those people, go ahead and type a comment in the word box there. But you can't be heavy-handed like that in the court of public opinion, because it won't work. Especially if you're trying to, if the hammer you're trying to use is something that's not really that impressive. Like this isn't groundbreaking stuff. I had never heard of these games until I read that article.
But like, let's say that Nintendo did, patent basically a new innovation, and like, I'm not going to try and speculate as to what it would be, but some new game format, just like they've come up with game formats in the past, like that would be terrible, and I would feel badly about it. But like, what am I going to do? Not play Nintendo? Like
Nintendo, point, I think
they're all bad companies. It's like, and yet we all choose to still be here because it's fun.
Well, and there's like no other choice realistically.
I think they're going to have a lot of backlash for this.
But then, what are you going to do? Not game?
Yeah,
you're not going to play their games.
But
Chris doesn't like the game now because of this thing. So right there's an example of that.
Yeah, but I'm like a woke cuck to socialism or whatever. I don't know.
But this will eventually be news, and when it becomes news and people find out about it, they'll be like, "Oh, that's shitty. Why are you trying to do that? Because you're grabbing at cash." And
that's shitty until the Harry Potter game comes out, and then everyone buys that, and we get another video banned.
Yeah, but we said some very unkind things about that. There's a lot of Harry Potter.
I think you said some unkind things about the Harry Potter video.
Yeah, I share Chris's fear because, like, if you take a notoriously shitty company like EA, for example, and you take their unoriginal idea of FIFA or any of their sports games, like, I can see them in an instant trying to patent that. And sure, it's definitely a stretch to try and patent virtual soccer, but then they just take it one step further, dissect that idea of FIFA, and maybe they try and patent the virtual announcer system that goes with it. And if they manage to get through that, well, there's tons of games out there that have announcers. I mean, there's a whole genre that started with like the Stanley Parable and Bastion and all of that stuff that has like a narrator driven game. Does that now fall under the virtual announcer that EA managed to patent? I think big companies like that might start looking to just patent whatever they can.
I do actually have like a real example of something somewhat similar to this happening. It does have to do with video games, does have to do with patents. Bandai Namco actually patented interactive loading screens, and the patent recently expired. So that's why, like, I know, Jake, you've played Fire Emblem Three Houses. Now we have that little mini game where you can have the character run around during the load screen. But for 17 years, I think it was, there was a complete, like, lockup of your ability to do anything on the load screen, which is why we stared at load screens for a decade plus and didn't have anything cool to do on them except read game tips. And
But
what?
how relevant is that today? Like, how many AAA games today have load screens?
All of them.
None, because
Every console game.
They all have load screens, and they're all long because the hard drives suck until now. But like, you didn't see any, like, that whole concept of doing something with a load screen was just completely shut down forever. Like, nobody did anything with it because they didn't want to pay Bandai Namco, presumably, or Bandai Namco didn't even let them.
And that's funny because I didn't know that. But one of the things that I've noticed recently is a lot of loading screens will still do the game tips, but they'll let you scroll through the game tips, which is actually so much better than just staring at random tips, is being able to sort through all of them to find what you're looking for. And like when I was playing Death Stranding, that was super helpful to just like flip through game tips while it was loading. I didn't realize that was because the patent expired.
So yeah, I don't know. I see this as being nothing but bad. This is like the worst. Honestly, like, since we started the channel, this is like the worst news to me personally. Maybe I'm like way over jumping here, but
No, I agree, because yeah, I truly do believe that it's indicative of more to come. And, you know, like, backlash is real, but at the same time, like, we've seen microtransactions proliferate in video games, and like, they don't seem to be going away. I assume this one, and this is even more obtuse, and like less understandable, I think, to a lot of folks. And it's also just very much a piece with, you know, patent law generally, and new trade agreements happening all the time to further expand how much can be protected by intellectual property law and for how long. So buckle up, folks.
buckle up, folks.
I don't know. Like, you still don't have to buy it. Like, the microtransactions, sure, they're still around, but like, people hate them, and like,
but people still buy the games.
Some people do, but people that
Most
there are lost sales there, and you're always gonna, microtransactions is a whole thing, but like,
Well, but okay.
there will always be like, fundamentally, if you're trying to sell something that's patented and nobody buys it, then you really don't have much of a leg to stand on, because your patent is effectively worthless. Like, if you do enough stuff like this, and there are certain companies, I think EA will be likely to patent shit that they come out with. But if you do enough of that, people are going to notice, and it's going to make you unpopular, especially if you're talking about like going after some of the core stuff.
Sure. I mean, I'm just
kind of is.
like, but before it even gets to the consumer side, just think like, let's just pretend that the Zelda game Nintendo's working on right now was going to effectively have a cool way of using the Nemesis system, and now that, like, that's just not gonna happen. It's like, oh well, that whole cool, really fun chunk of the game where they kind of took that and innovated on it is gone, theoretically.
Yeah, but you'll never know either
Right,
way.
but that's still shitty.
But you're losing something that would have been good.
Yeah.
Like, you'll never know you missed it because you didn't get it. But that's like if someone was going to give you $1 million and then, you know, got in a car crash on the way to your house. Like, it still would have been better without the car crash.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that like the games are going to be without features that do something similar to that. You just can't do that specifically. Like,
Yeah.
that's what a patent is. You can't patent everything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at this point, we're just kind of we're going in circles with it. But yeah, it's not good at the very.
It sucks.
Yeah, it sucks.
It sucks.
It does suck. It sucks. But we will have more positive things to talk about in the future. And when we do, what should our viewers do, Brian?
When we have more positive things to talk
I don't
about.
fucking know.
Let us know.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know when we have more
Send us
positive
positive
things.
news.
And the way you would let us know is by your comments down in the word box. And I'm sure that this is kind of a contentious issue. People are distraught about this. So leave your thoughts on it down in the word box there. We love reading your comments. And if you watch this far in the video, you probably liked it. So go ahead and click that subscribe button, because we do have a lot more content like this right here on the Cohesive Friendship Unit channel. And smoke them if you got them, guys. That's all for me tonight, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Catch you guys next time.